as always, my name is Addie and this is the Knits by AJ Crafting Podcast, and this is episode 54. Thank you to everybody who watched my spring making plans video that I put up last week. The response to that has just been so overwhelmingly good. I did not expect that video to do as well as it has, and I'm really glad that it has done so well, to be honest, because it took a lot of work, and so it's nice when things like that happen. If you're a new subscriber coming from that video, then thank you so very much for choosing to stick with me and see some of those plans come to fruition. If you're a returning subscriber, then thank you so very much for coming back. I absolutely love having you here, and I can't wait to share the makes that I have been working on this week with you all. So I only have knitting to share this week. I did do one tiny bit of sewing, but only to fix my daughter's Halloween dress. I'll put a picture of it up here. I don't have it with me to show you all because today she has actually worn it to school. It's World Book Day, and her school are doing like a non-uniform / dress up day, and so she has worn this so that she can be a witch for today for one of her favourite books, Room on the Broom. So yes, that is the only bit of sewing I did this week. I just reattached the skirt and the bodice because the seam had popped. So I just took the entire skirt off and re-sewed the gathering stitches and then reattached it because it just seemed like that was going to be the kind of cleanest way to fix up this dress. And then I also overlocked the two edges together so that even if she did stand on it again while she's playing or running around at school, and the actual like seam popped, then it's not going to completely come apart. So yes, that is the only bit of sewing that I did this week. I didn't do it today. That would have been insane. But yes, other than that, I have got plenty of knitting to share this week. So I've got 2 finished objects and 4 whips to go through. So without further waffle, let's get into it. So my first finished object this week is a pair of socks. And these are my COLORWORK Cuff Club socks for the month of November. Well, the chart was from November. I obviously knit them in February. But yes, so these are the COLORWORK Cuff Club socks from November. And it was just this beautiful Fair Isle chart with these crosses. Are they crosses or are they diamonds? Because sometimes I see diamonds and sometimes I see crosses. So yeah. I'm not really sure. And I used Giddy Yarn's BFL sock in the colour He Got Her a Drink and Sent Her to Bed, which is this colour. And it was week 3 of the Grinch weekly sock set advent from last year that I got. But this skein did not come with the pink mini that I used. The pink mini is actually from week 4. I swapped week 4 and week 3. I swapped them around because I wanted something with a little bit more high contrast. Week 3's mini was this one, and so yeah, there just wasn't a huge amount of contrast, and I tried the colour work in this and you just couldn't see it. I feel like these are showing up a little bit more kind of high contrast on camera than they are in real life. So I decided to use this pink, and to be honest it worked really well because there are like pink and purple speckles and it's quite a variegated skein, so it worked out really, really well. And I absolutely love these socks. I say that about every pair of socks that I finish, but I do absolutely love these socks. I can't wait to be able to wear them. And so I knit up size medium. I always do size medium, but I do my ribbing and my colour work on a 2mm needle, and then I do the rest of my sock on a 2.25 because my colour work gauge is incredibly loose when I knit socks. So I always like to go down a needle size so that the gauge matches between the stockinette for the body of the sock and the colour work for the cuff. So yeah, done that. Last week when I showed these, I was at the gusset of sock 2. I don't know which one is which now, to be honest, because I took the marker out. But yeah, I was just at the gusset of sock 2. So this week I worked down the gusset decreases, worked the foot, added the last round of colour work at the toe, and then obviously added on the toe. So did my ends, washed and blocked them, and now they are a beautiful finished object. and I cannot wait to be able to wear them. I'm really looking forward to being able to wear these, to be honest. I think this colourway is absolutely stunning. I love the little sort of gentle speckling and the variegation. I think it's a really lovely colourway, and I really do hope that she brings out, that Helen from Giddy Yarns, I hope she brings out these colourways as single skeins or like sock sets, like in their own sort of, like available on their own instead of just in the advent, because I think this is a really, really lovely colourway, and I would definitely like to purchase it again to make maybe like a muscle bra or something out of it. And the BFL sock base is absolutely lovely. It's soft, but it's not merino soft. It still feels a little bit more kind of rustic, and it's quite grippy as well, and I really like it for socks because they feel a little bit more sturdy. So yeah. Last week I did say about the colourwork on the toe kind of disappearing into the like the main skein, but I think this is the second one, but it's definitely much clearer because there's less speckling down at the toe. And so yeah, I'm really glad that I did do that. I think it just adds a little bit extra to the sock, and I am very, very happy with them. So all in all, I cast these on February the 12th and I cast them off on March the 2nd, so these took me a grand total of 19 days to knit, which is pretty good, to be honest. I am very happy with that. 19 days feels like a fairly decent amount of time to spend on a sock. I don't really tend to knit my socks all that much in the evening either. I just kind of take them with me in my bag and just knit on them as and when once I get past the colourwork. So that is one of the reasons I really love this club. And cost-wise, the pattern, so the COLORWORK Cuff Club, you buy the pattern once and then you get each chart each month. So you only actually pay once, but you get an update each month for the full year. So for the whole thing, it's £11.50. And the yarn, I got these in an advent, which cost me about £80. So a quarter of that is obviously £20. So I'm going to say my rough cost for these is about £31.50. However, I do have a fair amount of yarn left over. Obviously, I've got these, so I should be able to make something else out of these. Maybe a pair of socks for my daughter as well, perhaps another pair of socks for me. So, yeah. I always find the costings a little bit skewed on socks. I feel like I say this every single time, because I don't ever use like the full skein, so I only kind of use maybe half of it. So I should kind of cut the cost in half, but I always like to do these costings as if you were going to buy all of the materials, sort of if you didn't have any of them available. So yes, £31.50 for these socks. So that's my first finished object. I never really know how to talk about my socks when they're a finished object, because like you've heard me chat about them so many times before. But yeah, definitely feel like I might be knitting up this chart again, possibly for my husband. I might even try and alter it for my daughter, because it was such a good fun chart to knit. And yeah, I really, really like it. So those are my COLORWORK Cuff Club socks for the month of November. I'm glad that I'm kind of catching up with the COLORWORK Cuff Club socks again, because I took a couple of months off over Christmas and everything, and now I kind of really want to catch up. So my second finished object is a new cast on for this week that I cast on and cast off. It was a relatively quick knit. And so this is technically the weekend hat, but I made it as a headband instead of a hat. So this is a pattern by Petite Knit. I knit up size medium, and I used Cascade 220 in the colour white. I think it's white. This skein had been living in my stash for a fair while, so it didn't have a ball band on it, but I do believe that this is just the white colourway. And I used a 3.5mm needle as recommended in the pattern to make this headband. Now, I know that there is a weekend headband pattern, but I already had the weekend hat because I made one a couple of years ago. And so I just didn't want to have to buy another pattern. And I was pretty sure that I could just use the hat pattern to make a headband and just alter it ever so slightly. So I cast this on because we've been outside a little bit more, the weather's been a bit nicer, we've been starting to do the gardening, and all of last year whilst we were doing the gardening throughout the spring, or my daughter was out playing in the garden, or we were just out and about, I always felt like I was getting too hot in my hat if we were moving about a lot. But I needed something to stop the wind from getting to my ears, because I just find as soon as it gets windy, and if it's a cold wind, I just get an instant headache if it's going past my ears. And so I wanted something that was going to cover my ears but not get me too hot like a hat. And I felt the whole year that I needed a headband, and I just never cast one on. So this year I decided to be prepared and cast myself one on fairly early. And so I decided to just use a pattern that I already had to create one. So it's fairly easy to hack the weekend hat pattern into a headband. So all I did was essentially I cast on with a what's it called? A provisional I cast on with a provisional cast on, so I had live stitches on both sides. And then I knit 5 centimeters in the 1x1 rib, and I cast on with the stitch count from the hat for the women's size. So yeah, then I knit 5 centimeters of 1x1 rib, and then I did the double knit rounds that you're supposed to do in the weekend hat pattern to make it fold nicely. Now, I don't know how well they actually work in the hat. My weekend hat, it tries to fold either before or after the double knitting rows, so it doesn't necessarily work too well in my hat to kind of keep it folded in the same place. I still have to move it around as much as I would any other hat. But in this headband, because the stitches don't really have anywhere else to go, they kind of like have to fold at that point because there's no extra fabric. It's actually worked out really, really well. So yeah, I knit 5 centimeters, did the double knitting rounds, and then I knit 10 centimeters of 1x1 rib, did the double knitting round, and then I did another 5 centimeters, and then I just grafted it together. Now, I did use some pink on the inside because I thought I was going to run out of the white. I just didn't do any calculations on my yarn correctly. To be honest, I sort of cast this on really quickly one afternoon and then just sort of went with it. So yeah, I think it's worked out really well, to be honest. I'm probably never going to wear it the other way around because the grafting line is quite obvious, because obviously this is 1x1 rib. I think maybe in the actual weekend headband pattern there are better instructions for grafting the two bits together, so it could be reversible, but yeah, I didn't see the need to buy a second pattern. I just wanted to use what I had, and I think it's worked out really, really well. This is ever so slightly damp still because it is obviously a kind of like worsted weight double thickness 1x1 rib headband, and I put this in to wash yesterday morning, and so it's just taking a little bit longer to dry. So I'm not going to put it on because I don't really want to put wet wool on my head. So yeah, I kind of disregarded everything in the pattern apart from the stitch count and the double knitting rounds. So it's kind of a weekend headband slash hat, but also kind of not. But it was very nice to kind of have the pattern there to sort of double check things if I needed to. And I think this is going to be a really useful piece in the spring when we're outside, just to cover my ears because they get a little bit chilly and I don't want a headache. I actually think I might cast one of these on for my daughter as well in what I've got left of the pink, to kind of protect her ears a little bit as well in the wind, because it can be quite sharp, especially in the early spring days, and we are really enjoying being able to get back out in the garden and everything. So yeah, I'm really, really happy with this. I think it's knit up really well. I think it's going to be a really useful piece to have in my wardrobe, and I think it was a really lovely kind of easy breezy knit, almost like a vanilla sock, just because it was just 1x1 rib, and it was really easy to do on a 16-inch circular. So yeah, super quick little headband. And I cast this on March the 3rd and I cast it off on March the 5th. So this took me a grand total of 3 days to knit. And the pattern for the weekend hat costs £4.13. The yarn for one skein of Cascade 220, I think I used about 63 grams. So you could definitely get a sort of adult sized headband out of one skein of the Cascade 220. So one skein is £8.99. And so that brings the grand total for this pattern to £13.12. So I'm pretty happy with that, to be honest, and I hope that this does kind of fulfil the purpose of stopping the wind getting to my ears. So those were all of my finished objects, just a few little things this week, and now we can get into the really interesting bit, which is all of my whips. So my first whip is my Tiptoe Through the Tulips socks, and these are by Stone Knits. and I'm using Rico Socks Neon in the colour green, WeQ Yarns Merino in the colour Homestead, and Cascade 220 in the colour Moss. Now this WeQ Yarns is no longer available because unfortunately they are no longer dyeing, but this is my wonderful spring colour palette. And I'm using a 2 and a 2.5mm needle like I do for all of my socks, and I'm knitting up a size medium. And so last week when I showed these, I was here. I forgot to put a marker in them, but I did go back and kind of check my last podcast, and I was just here. I just finished the first of the tulips for the foot, and I think I thought that I could just do 3 rounds of tulips and that would be the end of my foot, but I think I just completely misjudged how long my feet are, because that would just not have given me anywhere near enough room. So I've done 4 rounds of tulips for the foot, and then I've added in the last chart and I've done the toe. But I did have to kind of deviate from the pattern to do the toe on these, because essentially the pattern has you work your tulips until you can no longer get another row of tulips in there, and then you do this last chart that is kind of like this checkerboard pattern, like on the top of the sock. So you work that, and then you are supposed to do some stockinette and then do a decrease and then do your toe. But I was going to have to do sort of about that much stockinette, and I thought that's going to look really funny on the end of this COLORWORK sock, and I wanted it to be really continuous and really smooth and sleek. So I decided to omit the decrease, like the rapid decrease, to get you back to the original stitch count from the top of the sock. After doing the COLORWORK, I decided that I wasn't going to do that decrease, and I was instead just going to start the toe. And so I had more stitches starting my toe than the pattern actually recommended, but I just thought that's going to look more kind of intentional than just having this band of stockinette, and it has worked out really, really well. It meant that I had enough space to it meant that I have enough length in the sock for it to fit properly, but I don't have like that sort of centimetre and a half of just plain stockinette, and it kind of looked a little bit more intentional. So yeah, the toe is ever so slightly longer than say the toe on these socks, but to be honest, when you actually put it on, you cannot notice at all. And so actually I think it's worked out really, really well, and I think it's just what I'm going to do going forward if I can't get a full COLORWORK chart out of the rest of the length that I need. Realistically, I probably could have just done like the top of the tulip and added that in and then not had the leaves, but I just wanted it to be even. I wanted to have full tulips with the leaves and everything, and just lengthening the toe has worked out really well to give me the length that I need. So yes, I have finished sock 1 and I have started on sock 2, which I can't find. Oh, there it is, it's fallen out. So I started up sock 2 fairly quickly after finishing sock 1. So I've worked through the ribbing. I changed my ribbing from the 1x1 half twisted rib that was recommended in the pattern, and I did 2x1 rib like I do on my COLORWORK Cuff Club socks. Just because I prefer it, to be honest. I don't really like knitting half twisted rib, and I definitely don't like knitting it on such small needles like you need for socks. So yeah, I just subbed in a 2x1 rib instead. And then I have done 2 rounds of the tulip motif. So I've done 1 repeat of the chart because each chart has 2 tulip rows, and I've got 1 more row of tulips to do before I can put in the heel, and I just have to knit it to match the first one. So hopefully I will be able to get through that this week, because I really want to be able to wear these. I think they're going to be a really lovely pair of socks for this time of year where it's still chilly and you need something warm on your feet, but you want something kind of bright and colourful and spring themed. So yes, I'm very much looking forward to getting these off of the needles. So I cast these on February the 23rd, and so they've currently been on my needles for 12 days and I'm thoroughly enjoying them. So yes, hopefully I can get through them fairly quickly. So whip number 2 is my first jumper cast on for spring. I cast this on last week, so you have seen it once before. But this is the Astrid Sweater by PERNILLE LARSEN. And I am using Noro Silk Garden Solo. Is that what it's called? Yeah, Noro Silk Garden Solo in the colour 33, which just looks like this. It's this beautiful pickle green, and I'm just absolutely obsessed with it, especially now that the weather's changed and we've got this beautiful sunshine and the mornings are getting brighter. I really kind of want this to just chuck on in the mornings to go out in, once, like now that it's really chilly but still really sunny. I just want something a little bit brighter than my like winter jumpers. So yeah, I'm really very much looking forward to getting this knit up. So I'm knitting size 1, and I'm using a 3.25 and a 3.75mm needle. And again, I've made a fair bit of progress on this. So I worked on this whilst I was editing last week, and obviously there was quite a lot of editing because I put out 2 videos last week. So I've made a fair bit of progress on this. So last week I was here, but I had only done this back panel. And this week I have worked up the front panel to match. So for this pattern you work bottom up, and you essentially cast on one lot of ribbing and knit that up, and then you do the short rows, and then you put it on hold, and then you cast on the next lot, knit the ribbing to match, and then do the short rows, and then you join them both together. So I cast on the second lot of ribbing, knit all of that, did the short rows. Unfortunately had to pull back because I knit too much ribbing, so I had to pull back a couple of rows and then re-knit the short rows, and then I joined them to get them in the round. But once you join them in the round, you then have to do more short rows because there's like a high-low hem on this, so you add in more short rows to lower the back. So that is what I have done here. So now this is the back. This was the first section that I cast on and showed last week, and then this is the front. So there's a good bit of drop at the back there, and obviously you pick up stitches along your ribbing to create this beautiful curved hem, and I just think that this is going to be an absolutely lovely layer. I love this detail. I love that it's like a split hem, but it's also curved, so there's no like bit of sort of wobbly ribbing or anything. I just think it's going to be such a lovely layer. So yes, this is now at perfect like knitting and reading stage, and thank you all so very much for your book recommendations last week. I'm really looking forward to getting into some of them and sort of expanding my like reading list for this year. I'm just finishing up a book at the moment, and then I'm going to be getting into some new ones. I've downloaded a load of samples onto my Kindle so I can just get going straight away and hopefully kind of really get into some of them. But yeah, some really great recommendations, and thank you all so very much. I really do appreciate it. But yes, I'm going to be using this as like knitting and reading. I think I might start doing what Nitty Natty does. So I get up quite a lot earlier than the rest of everybody in the house. And so I might take sort of like half an hour whilst I'm like drinking my coffee to, instead of doom scrolling my phone, to take some time to knit and read every morning. And I think that this will progress really, really quickly if I do things like that. So that's a little change that I would like to make to my morning routine, to be kind of a little bit more, I don't know, a little bit more proactive in the day instead of just doom scrolling my phone, which to be honest we all do, don't we? I mean, it's a great time for me to like check up on new patterns and things because I end up scrolling Ravelry and Instagram and things like that, but I think I'll feel a little bit more awake and ready for the day if I'm doing something that doesn't involve my phone. So that is what I am doing for this. I've just got to work straight and stockinette now until I get to the armhole, and then I need to do some shaping for the backs and the fronts because this is obviously a bottom-up design. I want to make this slightly cropped, but not too cropped, like just hitting the top of my hip bone, I think, or like the gap just hitting the top of my hip bone, so that it's still nice to wear with jeans and shorts and high-waisted garments and also dresses as well. So yeah, I just need to kind of work out exactly how long I want to make this before I split for the underarms. But yeah, that is where I am with this so far. The yarn is an absolute delight to work with. although I am kind of struggling a little bit with the kind of thick and thinness of it, mainly just the thinness part, because whilst I was doing my ribbing, I don't know if it's just the way that I knit my ribbing, perhaps I'm just a little bit kind of more aggressive on my yarn, well, maybe not aggressive, but like perhaps I just pull it a little bit tighter than I do when I'm just knitting stockinette. But on both sets of ribbing, I ended up accidentally like splitting my yarn. It was so thin that it just broke. I don't know how well that's, but yeah, it just comes to a complete like thread width, and it just snapped as I was knitting it. So I've got a couple of ends and everything that I need to sew in from that happening. But yeah, overall it is really nice to work with, despite the shedding making me sneeze every now and then. But yeah, it's a really nice yarn to work with, and I would definitely recommend for now. But yeah, did split on me. It seems to have been fine now that I've been working up in the stockinette, so I don't know if it's just because my tension is a bit looser, or maybe it's just the way that the yarn is moving is a little bit kind of less sort of harsh on it whilst I'm knitting stockinette. But it's definitely something to look out for if you are intending to use this yarn for anything that's got a lot of ribbing or anything, to kind of just make sure that you're tensioning that yarn and just watching out for the little bits where it's just a little bit too thin to kind of cope with that tension. But yeah, that is my Astrid pullover for now, and I cast this on February the 21st, so this has currently been on my needles for 14 days. And to be honest, I haven't worked on it that much this week. I kind of got it joined in the round and then was leaving it for reading and knitting, but then haven't really had a chance to do very much of that because I got distracted by some new cast-ons that I can get into now. Okay, so my next whip is a really exciting one, and it is my wave sweater by SPEKTAKELSTRIK, and I am knitting up size 1. I've had to go up a needle size from the 4.5mm recommended in the pattern to a 5mm, and I am using Peruvian Highland wool from Filcolana, and I'm using Ballerina as my main colour and Thyme as my contrast colour. And I am really heavily modifying this pattern. So the pattern is a top-down raglan where you start at the neckband, knit your ribbing, and then continue on into your raglan and everything with some colour work. And I am turning mine into a drop shoulder. So I've had to do quite a lot of maths to work this out. And I'll have like all of the maths and everything written out in my Ravelry project page in case you were interested in how I worked everything out. But essentially, I took the stitch count at the body and I minused the stitches that you have to cast on at the underarm for each side. And then I divided it by 2 to give me the amount of stitches that I needed to cast on for the back panel. And then I took the back neck stitch count from the pattern as well. So yeah, that gave me the amount of stitches that I needed for the back neck. And then I used the Sister Mountain women's sizing chart to give me the number, or like to give me the amount of sort of space I needed for the short rows and also for the drop of the shoulder, so that it didn't just like come out as a rectangle, and gave me a little bit of shaping there. So that gave me 6.5 centimeters. So I knew that I needed to do enough short rows to give me 6.5 centimeters, which I think ended up at about 12 rounds, or rows, sorry, because I wasn't in the round. And then I had to work out where I needed to start the colour work. And so to do that, I worked out where I needed to start the colour work on the front neck for it to start directly underneath the neckband like it does in the pattern. And essentially what I did was I worked out how many rows I was going to need to get past the shoulder and do the neckband. And then I took that number and I minused 4 centimeters from it for the back, and that gave me the amount of rows that I needed to knit before I got to the colour work. So this is how I'm looking at the moment. So I've obviously cast on and done my short rows. This is not wanting to work out. So the short rows give me this lovely like slant down the shoulder so that I can pick up my stitches for the shoulder. and then I've got a little bit of just blank space before I then started the colour work. But I'm quite happy with it, to be honest. I think it's working out really, really well. And for my colour work, I am working both stranded colour work and intarsia. So I am kind of just leaving my ends when I get to the end of the row and then just knitting to the end with the main colour at the moment. And I'm just working the chart from the pattern. So I did end up having to move where I started the chart because I was kind of I worked out where I needed to start the chart from where it would be on the body, so they all matched up as you went up and down the jumper. And so that meant that I had to move my stitches to account for the ones that I was going to cast on at the underarm. So I think I started like 4 stitches over or something from where I was supposed to be in the chart. And that should hopefully match up when I then get to the next round of waves at the underarm. But this is kind of all trial and error. I'm not sure if it's actually going to work out. I'm hoping that it does. And I was kind of considering the idea of doing like a full video, like a project vlog of me knitting this, so I can go into a little bit more detail. So if you would like to see that, please do let me know in the comments below, and I can get to filming that before I then make any more progress on this. And then I can kind of sit and draw diagrams and all that kind of thing and just kind of update you as I go along. But I'm really happy with how this is turning out. I did think that knitting the colour work flat was going to be a right pain in the bum, but actually, because I'm doing intarsia and I'm not having to carry the contrast yarn all the way to the end and then have to like cut it or try and work it up the side, it's actually a lot more pleasant to knit. It definitely takes me a lot longer to get back across on the purl rows than it does to get across on the knit rows, but actually it's quite enjoyable at the moment, and it's really not for very long because obviously this is the pattern is knit up at an Aran weight gauge, and so it's quite a quick knit once I get past this first bit where I'm knitting flat. So I don't think it's going to be a lot of rows of doing the colourwork flat anyway. But I'm really, really enjoying this. I think it's going to be a really lovely piece in my wardrobe. The yarn is so soft. This is one of my favourite yarns. I absolutely love it. And to be honest, I just can't wait. I think it's going to be such a lovely piece. And I think that since I'm using a worsted weight yarn at an Aran, for an Aran weight pattern, I think the gauge is like 16 stitches or something. It's going to be a little bit more airy and not too hot. I did worry that it was going to be too hot for spring and it was going to be something that I wasn't going to wear this season. But I think if I get this done fairly quickly, then I should get some good wear out of it before it suddenly gets too hot, because I think it's going to be a really good kind of like just outerwear layer that you wear without a coat or a jacket over the top whilst it's still chilly, especially in the mornings. So I'm very, very much looking forward to this, and I just think it's so much fun. Like, look at that, that's so cute. I love the colours together, and yeah, I'm just really excited for it, to be honest, and I can't wait to get to knitting on it a little bit more. So that is where I am with this. I hope I've covered everything. Yeah, it's a lot of maths to get through it. So hopefully I've kind of covered it well enough. But I cast this on March the 1st, and so it has currently been on my needles for 6 days. But I haven't touched it for a couple of days, to be honest. And I'm really looking forward to getting back to it. So that was my wave sweater. And that brings me to my last whip of today, which is another pair of socks. And it is yet more colour work because, like I said in my spring making plans, I am just on a colour work kick at the moment. I just want to cast on all the colour work. So since I finished up my last pair of Colourwork Cuff Club socks, and that was the November chart, the March chart came out, and I love it, and I just needed to cast it on. And I thought, since it's quite a short chart, I thought it was going to be a really good pair of socks to cast on, so that I had just some stockinette knitting as well, because now that I've finished all of my smaller projects, I like to have one on the go all the time so that I can take it with me when we go out and this, that and the other. And since that colour work was so short, I thought it was going to be a really good project to have in my bag, because I just had to get through that chart and then it was just plain stockinette. So this is the COLORWORK Cuff Club by Summer Lee, and this is the March chart, and it's just this beautiful floral chart just at the very top of the sock. Get this end out of the way. There we go. So I have worked the chart, so I finished the ribbing, I've worked the chart, and now I'm just into the stockinette. And it's so pretty. I love it. It's perfect for March, where the spring flowers are just starting to poke through, and I think it just opens up a lot of different like colourway choices and everything. So I have gone for the last skein of my Giddy Yarns Advent. So this is the Grinch's Heart grew 3 sizes that day, and I am using this as my main colour, and then my contrast colours for my flowers are the mini from week 3, seeing as I needed to use that up. And then the centre of my flowers is this Rico Socks Neon in the colour yellow, and it's just so unbelievably bright. I thought it would be a really fun little pop of colour with these other two for the centre of the flowers. And so yeah, this is what we are looking like. I cast on size medium as always. I did 15 rounds of 2x1 rib for the cuff, and then I've just worked the chart as per the pattern. I'm not sure how long I want to make these. The pattern has them knit up quite short, but I'm not sure if I really want that shorter sock. I think I kind of want something that's a little bit longer. I kind of want to knit them, I think, maybe to the same length as these. So I've got a little bit longer to go. I think maybe like 30 rounds of stockinette. I've done 15 so far, so I think maybe just this again for the leg, just to make them a little bit more wearable for spring, because I still want a longer sock just to keep me a little bit warmer. I don't like it when there's a gap between my trousers and my socks. So yeah, I think I'm going to continue knitting for a little bit longer just for stockinette for the leg before I do the heel flap and gusset. But yeah. So you do have to do some 3-colour work in these, and I can't say it was my favourite thing to do, to be honest. It was just a lot of yarn management. I think I kind of managed it okay. My floats are a little bit chaotic. You also had to catch floats in this sock, which is not something I do very often. I never catch floats in my jumpers. I didn't catch floats in this jumper. I'm not catching them on my wave sweater. It's just not something I tend to do. I kind of just leave them hanging out in the back. I don't tend to like catch them on anything really when I'm putting them on, like when I'm putting on jumpers or socks or anything. So I just tend to be a little bit more careful whilst I'm doing it. But yeah, I did actually have to catch the floats in this, and it just made the colour work kind of just take a little bit longer. It was a bit sort of frustrating. It was just a bit cumbersome, just a lot of yarn management. Everything kept getting tangled, but to be honest, it was only like 3 rounds, so it really wasn't the end of the world, and it was good practice for if I do want to knit anything 3-colour work again in the future. I think I just find it really cumbersome to knit because I only have 2 hands. So obviously if I'm knitting 2-handed, like 2-colour work, I just hold 1 strand in each hand and they don't ever tend to kind of like tangle up. Whereas when there's 3, you always have to drop 1 to add in the 3rd strand. And so yeah, it was just a bit sort of fiddly, and I'm quite used to kind of just having 1 colour in each hand and just getting going. So yeah, it wasn't the worst experience, but it was just a little bit fiddly. But I think it was well worth it for this chart because I do think it's absolutely beautiful, and I can see it working up in so many different colours really, really well. And it's just a bit different, to be honest, to the other COLORWORK Cuff Club socks, having it just like right at the top there without anything else around it. And yeah, I think they are a beautiful pair of socks, and I'm very, very happy with how they are turning out. And so I cast these on March the 5th, and so these have currently been on my needles for 1 day. This was 1 evening's progress, so I'm pretty happy with that, to be honest. And yeah, just going to keep working down the leg, get through the heel flap, but these are kind of going in my bag as like my sort of on-the-go knitting, so I'm not sure how much progress I'm really going to make on them this week, because there are other things that I want to knit. This guy's come in for the outro. But that is everything from me this week. Thank you all so very much for watching. Thank you if you watched my spring making plans. I'll leave a link to that video down below if you want to see the other things that I'm looking to cast on this year for spring. But thank you all so very much for watching, and I will catch up with you all next week with some more crafting. Happy making!